Are there any sensible reasons to really think that God is actually there, or if he's just kind of a figment of our imagination, or it's wishful thinking of one kind or another? And when I was a teenager, it actually genuinely was a question I used to ask myself all the time. Because in the house that I grew up in Ballymena, where we know that Ballymena is in the countryside, and at night time you don't have the light pollution that you might have in a city, when you look up at the sky, you can actually see the stars. And I have a couple of really distinct memories of getting out of the car on Sunday nights after we'd been visiting my granny, and it was dark, and I'd look up at the sky and see the stars and think to myself, is there anything beyond this? Is there a reason for all of this? Is the God of the Bible the person who's beyond this, or is it something else? And years later, I'd come to find, I'd be reading a book by a guy called Johannes Kepler. He was one of the best astronomers that we've had in the past couple of centuries. And when I read something that he wrote, it gave words to the question that I had all those years ago when I was a teenager. And this is the way that Kepler phrased the question. There is nothing I want to find out and long to know with greater urgency than this. Can I find God, whom I can almost grasp with my own hands, in looking to the universe and also in myself? So there's the question that we're going to try and frame this discussion with. But I want to start by making a quick remark about science, because we live in a profoundly scientistic age. Not scientific, but scientistic. People are very confused about what the nature of science is, and the types of things which science allows us to discover and understand. And we're often told that science has somehow disproved God, that as we come to a better understanding of how things work in the world and in the universe, it somehow rules out the need for a creator of all those mechanisms. You know, we might say that we've fully come to understand how a light bulb works, and on that basis we no longer need Thomas Edison, the guy that invented light bulbs. There's a categorical difference going on there. And if we think that these scientific explanations overrule the need for God as a potential explanation, that is not good science. That is just very, very bad philosophy. And we need to be good at both, because there are, in fact, some very good reasons for belief in God coming out of science all the time. And our job as people is just to try and understand as much of reality as we actually can. And if we spend just a moment reflecting on it, we can see that it's so obvious that the whole of reality contains much more than just the material world of physics, chemistry, and biology. That is obviously a very big world of physical stuff, but there is more to it than that. Because there is also the world of mind, the world of meanings, of purpose, intentions, and other non-physical things like equations and mathematics and logic. And this world of mind gives the world of matter its meaning. Physics, chemistry, and biology depend on this world of mind to give what these things discover any meaning. So we need to be both good at science and good at philosophy or logic and thinking if we are to appreciate the fullness of everything there is to be discovered about reality. And let me give you just a quick example of this. You can imagine at the end of the day, you go home and you see the kettle boiling. Somebody's going to, make a cup of tea for you when you come in, and you ask, Andy, why is this kettle boiling? And I suddenly leap to the scientific explanation. And I tell you, well, the kettle is boiling because it's plugged into the wall, and there's a flow of electrons going up the wire, and those electrons are going into the element, and the element is heating the water by a process of convection, which is going to continue until the water reaches 100 degrees Celsius. That is why the kettle is boiling. And then you look at me like I've just completely misunderstood what you were asking. Andy, why is the kettle boiling? And then I understand what you're getting at. But yes, It's because I'm making you a cup of tea. It's a completely different type of explanation, and that is exactly how the relationship between the world of matter and the world of mind works. The worlds of science and logic, we need them both, and to hold them together to give us a full explanation of things. So what I want to do today is just give you two ways that this actually works. I'm going to take two observations from modern science, and we're going to apply the world of mind to those observations. And I'm going to give you two very strong reasons coming out of science to believe in the existence of God. And we're going to have to move very, very quickly, so hopefully I'll get a bit more Ballymena sounding as we go. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is the fact that the universe and time and space had a beginning. And that is probably the most game-changing discovery that science has ever made. That actually has huge consequences in terms of how we understand reality. And you know that the Bible has always claimed that the universe had a beginning. But over the years, in the centuries gone by, when science wasn't supporting the view of the Bible, people used to point at it and say, well, there's a reason for not taking the Bible seriously, the nonsense that it talks about. The universe used to be thought to have always existed as a kind of brute fact about reality. But then in 1915, a man you've probably heard of, Albert Einstein, he comes along with his theory of general relativity. And this means that more than a few questions have to be asked about what is actually going on. And when we apply the general theory of relativity to the universe, we can find that it is meaningful to talk about the universe in terms of its past history. And then a little bit later, in 1927, we've got Alexander Friedmann and Georges Lemaitre, a couple of mathematicians from Russia and Belgium. And these guys prove that the universe is expanding. Then a couple of years after that, 1929, Edwin Hubble, he discovers a thing called redshift. Put up your hand if you've done about redshift in physics class at school. There's a few. Yeah, GCSE, A-level, I don't know. But redshift is this thing about when we look at the light which is coming to us, the light which we can see on Earth, but coming from other galaxies, we're able to analyze the light and the wavelengths and the different things that are going on in order to prove that the galaxies sending those lights to us are actually moving away. And when we extrapolate back, so if things are expanding but we work backwards in reverse, we're able to prove that the universe is expanding from a single point in the finite past. Now, when all of this is becoming known, so we're in the 1915s, 20s, 30s, and people are trying to grasp with these amazing discoveries coming out of science, it did seem almost beyond comprehension, such a worldview shift in how we understand the universe. But the evidence has continued to mount up so much that now in 2017, the world's leading cosmologists are absolutely unanimous. And here's a few of them behind me. Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin. And Vilenkin says this: we can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. We must face the problem of a cosmic beginning. And Stephen Hawking, another person you're likely to have heard of, he says the same thing. All the evidence seems to indicate that the universe has not existed forever, but that it had a beginning about 15 billion years ago. This is probably the most remarkable discovery of modern cosmology. Now that is very interesting, something from the world of matter. But what's more interesting is when we ask the question from the world of mind. And that's why this guy, Alexander Vilenkin, refers to the cosmic beginning as a problem. Because we know that things which begin to exist must have had a cause. What then could be the cause of the universe? Things which begin to exist always have a cause. That is so intuitively obvious to us all. You know, can you imagine a situation where we would say the opposite? that things just pop into existence from nowhere for no reason due to no cause. You know, that kind of claim would just undermine all science and all knowledge. And yet that is the claim which is at the heart of atheism. Let's really think about this. Let's put this actually into real terms. So imagine we go for a wee walk together after REBOOT, and we go down to Belfast city centre, and we're walking up Royal Avenue, and we can see the City Hall at the end. And you say to me, Andy, the City Hall is a lovely building, where did it come from? And then I tell you, well, the City Hall, it just popped into existence for no reason, from nowhere, due to no cause. There were no builders, there were no architects, no diggers, no planners, just boop. One day, Belfast has a City Hall. Well, you guys would take me to be a guy well and truly short of a few sandwiches in a picnic. I would not be altogether upstairs if I told you that. Now, David Hume, who was a very famous Scottish philosopher who lived in the 1700s, he put it this way: I never asserted so absurd a proposition as that something could arise without a cause. Things which begin to exist always have a cause. If we are committed to anything in logic, it has to be this. So science tells us that the universe had a beginning, and logic tells us that things which begin to exist always have a cause. So what could be the cause of the universe? Well, let's keep thinking. One option would be to say that the laws of nature brought about the universe by themselves. And that's what the atheist chemist Peter Atkins says. He says that space-time generates its own dust in the process of its own self-assembly. Somehow the immaterial world dimension of time is able to bring about material reality if you just kind of wait long enough for this thing to happen. And Atkins, he calls this the cosmic bootstrap principle, which I think is weird, because when we talk about lifting things from our bootstraps, we're always referring to a case where that thing is futile. It's not possible to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. And here's a little video just to kind of prove that point.
The challenge is 20 quid. Yeah. You can pick up the bucket with your body weight. Come on. He's moving, he's lifting. He's lifting.
Come on, Jordan.
Go on, Jordan.
So, I thought you were ripped.
Take the fleece off, it might be lighter.
Did you give up?
Yeah. That guy's going to be there all day. I mean, what can we say about this? You've got a chemist, a respectable scientist, saying things can lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. Well, we know that that's just not the case. Things do not lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. Things do not create themselves. You know, maybe tomorrow you're going to have a Sunday roast. Who's going to make that Sunday roast? I'll tell you one thing for free. The Sunday roast is not going to make itself. So we have another philosopher, a guy based in Oxford by the name of Keith Ward, and he talks about Atkins' theory. And he says this: we are always right to think that persons or universes who seek to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps are forever deemed to failure. And an Oxford professor of mathematics, John Lennox, he concludes this: what all this goes to show is that nonsense remains nonsense, even when talked about by world-famous scientists. So let's go back to our question, and let's keep our thinking caps on. What could be the cause of the universe? Well, if something is going to bring about the existence of space and time, the first thing we can say is that that thing needs to be outside of space and time. That thing needs to be itself uncaused. That thing needs to be unimaginably powerful to bring all of this to be. And that thing needs to have the freedom and ability to do it. Persons are the things which we describe as having freedom and ability. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of that sounds like a very good description of God. The Bible has always claimed that the universe had a beginning. And now, modern science is saying the same thing, which is great news. John chapter 1, the beginning of the Gospel of John, says this: "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." He was with God in the beginning. "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." Turns out that is one of the most profound descriptions of reality that has ever been written. If the God of the Bible exists, then good science and good logic should point us to belief in him. And that's exactly what we find to be the case when we take seriously the discoveries of science that the universe had a beginning. So that's just one incredibly strong reason for belief in God, but there's more to it than that. Because just because there is a universe, it doesn't mean that we should expect to find any life inside the universe. So I want to move on to a second thing coming out of science, which tells us more and more and points us more and more towards God. And this is the fact that science is telling us just how finely tuned our universe is to support life like ours. In fact, it's probably beyond words to properly describe just how incredible this is. You see, it's very, very unlikely that carbon-based life like ours should exist in any universe, let alone this one. And we know from science that we have found that the parameters and the laws of nature as they exist are coming together in a unique balance that if any of them were to be altered in the tiniest way, then that balance would be destroyed and carbon-based life like ours would poof out of existence, or it would never have come into existence in the first place. Now, it was Valentine's Day a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if there's anyone in the room got a nice present for Valentine's Day. Hands up if there's any nice things went on. There's one here. Oh, and there too. Excellent. Now, Valentine's Day for me was a little bit weird this year, but I'll tell you more about that afterwards. But imagine this. Imagine a situation where you walk into a room on the 14th of February, and the first thing you see is a huge bunch of your favorite flowers sitting there, and a box of your favorite chocolates, and your very specific favorite chocolates from that very specific little place that you discovered when you were on holiday in that place that not too many people know about. And this is all looking very good. This is a pretty good Valentine's Day. And then things continue to escalate. You walk further into the room, and maybe your favorite song comes on. I don't know what that song might be. For me, it'd probably be something by Ed Sheeran. Oh, there it is, actually. All right. So now we're listening to Ed Sheeran. And this is a very good Valentine's Day. And you're thinking to yourself, whoa, this is absolutely amazing. What's this I see next? Is that a picture of me and my family sitting on the wall? Brilliant. Is that a chef in the kitchen making my favorite dish? Unbelievable. And my favorite box set is ready to start watching on the TV. This is absolutely stunning. What could be the cause of this absolutely amazing Valentine's Day that just seems to be so perfect for me to come and discover it at this time and in this place? Somebody tells you random coincidence. Random coincidence. The music has to stop. What are the chances of all of this coming together unless somebody has designed it? Roses are red, violets are blue. Who has done all of this for you? We live in a finely tuned universe, set up perfectly to support our existence. So guys, I need to skip a little bit, and time's going a little bit ahead of us. But there are two fantastically strong reasons to support our belief in God. The fact that the universe had a beginning, and that the universe is set up perfectly to support our existence. Now, when I got going, and I talked about this world of science and this world of logic coming together, and I've talked a lot about some kind of complicated things coming out of science. But I want to just bring it back to our actual experience. And I quoted to you John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. But if we'd kept going a little bit further down to that passage, we'd have got to verse 14, which says this: that Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Another profound description of reality. It is in fact the case that God, in the person of Jesus, is this perfect harmony of materiality. He came in the flesh, but he was the Word of God. It was all held together in the person of Jesus. And that is amazing, because it means that it's not just the really clever people who get to understand all of these things in science that can actually know God. Jesus came in the flesh in order to make it possible for each and every one of us to come to know him. He is a person who you can know, not a mystical force somewhere out there beyond the universe.